It's time for the real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? What's going on? Welcome to the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you guys are having a nice week. Thursday, one more sleep, and then it's Friday. Hallelujah. But we got sports going on all weekend. We got the final tonight of the Four Nations, the NHL's All-Star thing that's been just a smash hit. We're going to talk about that a little bit today. IU plays Purdue on Sunday. Joe Jackson, he's going to join the show. He does a really good job covering Big Ten basketball. The Pacers, they play tonight, so a lot of stuff on them as well. But we're going to start with the Indianapolis Colts tonight because there's a lot of speculation as the NFL draft and NFL free agency approach. Who are the Colts going to bring in to give Anthony Richardson a little bit of competition? And I'm pretty sure I know who they're going to bring in. Let's start with who they're not going to bring in and why. Aaron Rodgers is not coming to Indianapolis because he wants to go somewhere where he can potentially win a Super Bowl. The Los Angeles Rams are looking to move off of Matthew Stafford. Maybe they bring Aaron Rodgers in for a year and see what he can do in that offense with Sean McVay. I think that's a place that makes a lot of sense for him. I also don't think that the Indianapolis Colts want to have to deal with him like probably every other franchise in the NFL. The Colts probably don't like putting up with Zaire Franklin and all of his podcast quotes, but it's Zaire Franklin. He's not, as big of a star as a guy like Aaron Rodgers, so you can kind of get over it. And I don't think that the Colts want to have to deal with Zaire Franklin because he's not going anywhere, and Aaron Rodgers going on the Pat McAfee show where he can just continue to spew more nonsense. Here's the other thing about Aaron Rodgers potentially coming to Indianapolis that I don't think people think about enough. Pat McAfee and Aaron Rodgers are clearly very good friends. After the whole, drama situation with McAfee and the Colts last year, do you really think that Pat McAfee is going to encourage Aaron Rodgers to come to Indianapolis? I would be very surprised if that happened. And if Aaron Rodgers is smart, which, there's a part of me that thinks that he is. He's a little nutty, but I think he's got some common sense. I think he would have enough common sense to ask Pat McAfee about the state of the Indianapolis Colts franchise. And if that was to happen, there's no way that Pat McAfee would give the Colts a good review. He'd probably say something like, look, Aaron, the only plus of you coming to Indianapolis is we get to do these Tuesday interviews in person, which would be kind of cool. But aside from that, you don't want to touch that franchise. That's probably what Pat McAfee would say to Aaron Rodgers. So I don't see Aaron Rodgers coming to Indianapolis to compete with Anthony Richardson for the starting job this next season. Also, it's Aaron Rodgers. He's not going somewhere where he's going to have to compete to be the starter. He wants to be able to walk in, have the playbook handed to him, and then just kind of go do his thing. Okay, he doesn't want to compete or anything like that. So Aaron Rodgers coming to Indianapolis doesn't really seem to be in the cards. The other guy, Justin Fields, he's another option. I don't think he's going to come because he's not the Colts guy. And what I mean by that is he would have to thoroughly outplay Anthony Richardson in training camp to be named the starter. Because the Colts, like every other team in the NFL, are prideful and they don't want to be wrong. The Colts want to play Anthony Richardson. That's what they want to do. Because they don't want to admit to themselves that they may have, selected the wrong guy with the number 4 overall pick. Okay? They don't want to admit to that. And for Justin Fields, if a team like the Raiders calls him up and is like, hey, we would like for you to come be our starting quarterback, or we would like for you to compete with Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew and Desmond Ridder to be our starting quarterback, I think Justin Fields would be much more inclined to do that because none of those guys were the number 4 overall pick by the Las Vegas Raiders. If he went to a place like that, or to a place like the Titans or the Browns, if the Browns and Titans don't end up selecting a quarterback with the number 1 and number 2 overall picks, then he would be much more likely to actually be the starter there. He'd probably be the favorite to start in both of those situations. So I don't see Justin Fields ending up in Indianapolis because he wants to go somewhere where his odds to be the starting quarterback are just a little bit better. Sam Darnold, he's not coming to Indy because the Colts, they won't want to pay him. And I'm assuming that Sam Darnold wants to go to a place where he can win. And I think that pride ruins a lot of things. Like with the cap going up, the Colts can outbid whoever they want for Sam Darnold. Okay, like the cap went up, $22 million or whatever it was. Like there's no excuse not to be able to call up Sam Darnold and be like, hey, we're going to pay you more than fill in the blank team to come and play here. Okay, and that's obviously if the Vikings opt to not bring him back next year. And then the other issue, speaking of pride, is that if you bring him in, then you're probably giving up on Anthony Richardson. Like after everything that Sam Darnold did last year, and I'm sure people are going to point to, losing in the first round of the playoffs and losing that Week 18 game to the Lions to lose out on the 1 seed. He didn't play very well in those games, but when you look at all the other ones, the dude looked pretty good. Okay, like if you bring that guy in, you're not bringing him in to be your backup. And I don't think that the Colts are quite yet ready to give up on Anthony Richardson, whether that's right or wrong. Because once again, I don't think that they want to be wrong. I also think that the Colts do firmly believe that they haven't seen enough from Anthony Richardson quite yet. And bringing in a guy like Sam Darnold would be admitting defeat on Anthony Richardson. And I don't think that the Colts are quite yet ready to do that. And then the other thing is, why would Sam Darnold pick the Colts? He could come here, or he could go to a place like Pittsburgh, who just made the playoffs, who always has a good defense, who has, a receiver in George Pickens that's better than any weapon that the Colts have. They have a tight end in Pat Freiermuth, who's better than any tight end that the Colts have. They have a pretty good offensive line. Mike Williams would probably be the second best receiver on this Colts roster. The Steelers have good players. And they also have Mike Tomlin, one of the best coaches in the NFL. It seems like a much better place to wind up than Indianapolis. Okay, and there's other teams out there that I think have slightly better rosters than the Colts do. The Giants also have a better roster than the Colts. Okay, like they have a dominant defensive lineman. They've got a solidified left tackle who's going to be there for the next 7 years. They have an elite wide receiver already in Malik Neighbors. Okay, Brian Dable's a good head coach who's just been stuck with, Tommy DeVito playing quarterback for him these last few years. Sam Darnold isn't coming to Indianapolis unless Chris Ballard is willing to overpay. Chris Ballard doesn't overpay for anything. Okay, he's the type of guy to go to the grocery store and buy off-brand everything just to save like $20 at checkout. Like that's the kind of guy that Chris Ballard is. He's not going to take a risk. He's not going to overpay. Therefore, Sam Darnold is not going to wind up here in Indianapolis. Another option, a guy who's currently on the trading block, is Matthew Stafford. He ain't coming either. Ain't no way. Because Matthew Stafford is still good enough to win a Super Bowl. And this Colts roster is not good enough to win a Super Bowl. Now, if I had to firmly predict where Matthew Stafford's going to end up, I think it's going to be Pittsburgh, because the Pittsburgh Steelers were willing to trade their first and second round pick this year for Trevor Lawrence. That's a lot. Like that's a pretty nice haul. And, it's been reported that the Rams want a first round pick for Matthew Stafford. Okay. And look, for as far as the Steelers are concerned, they should absolutely jump at the chance to bring him in. For the Colts, they have more needs than just quarterback. Like they don't need to give up a first round pick for Matthew Stafford. Because sure, if you bring him in, you go 11-6, you make the playoffs, you might win the division with that record, and then you lose in the first round. And that's a success around here that would allow for Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen to keep their jobs. But I don't know. Chris Ballard's kind of arrogant. I don't think he thinks that he's going to get fired. And so he wants to hold on to that first round pick to address a need that the Colts, actually have. So I don't think that Matthew Stafford ends up here. I think he winds up playing in Pittsburgh next year, and then that division just gets even crazier, and the Browns continue to lose a whole lot of football games. Now, there is a quarterback that the Colts could bring in. Let's kind of start to talk about those guys. They could bring in Daniel Jones. I think that's a realistic option for the Indianapolis Colts. Okay. He's probably not going to beat out Anthony Richardson, but he's just good enough that you can convince people that you had a legitimate quarterback competition. Okay. He's won some games. He won a road playoff game. It's not hard to do, or excuse me, that's not easy to do, especially winning at Minnesota, one of the tougher places to play. I don't think he's going to leave the Vikings, though. I think he's in the process of doing what Sam Darnold did for the 1 year that he was in San Francisco. Sam Darnold had bounced around, New York, Carolina, and then he goes to San Francisco, which made a lot of sense for him. Hey, look, I'm going to sit here for a year. I'm going to back up Brock Purdy. I'm going to sit in meetings every day with Kyle Shanahan, one of the most well-respected head coaches in the NFL, one of the most, well-respected offensive minds, not just in the NFL, but in the history of the NFL. Okay, the NFL, it's a copycat league. Yeah, they're all copying Kyle Shanahan. Okay. And so Sam Darnold went there for a year, learned a whole bunch, kind of rehabilitated his image a bit. And that's what Daniel Jones is going to do in Minnesota this year. He's going to be there for a year, and he's not going to play because the Minnesota Vikings are either going to play Sam Darnold or J.J. McCarthy. We're still kind of waiting to see what they're going to do. And he's going to sit under Kevin O'Connell for a year. Okay, and that will restore his image around the NFL a bit because Kevin O'Connell is now a very well-respected head coach because he won a bunch of games with Sam Darnold. It's crazy. People love Kevin O'Connell, even though he's never won a playoff game as a head coach. And so he's going to sit there for a year, and he's going to learn a whole bunch from Kevin O'Connell, and Kevin O'Connell is going to walk up to the microphone, and people are going to be like, how's Daniel Jones handling things? And then Kevin O'Connell is going to give a nice, long response about how, players don't fail franchises. Franchises fail players, which kind of feels like a shot at every franchise in the NFL whenever he says it. And, we're going to spend a whole year, and everything that we hear about Daniel Jones is going to be great. And then he's going to come out next year, and he's going to leave, and he's going to go somewhere else, and he's going to compete for a starting job. I find it much more likely for the Colts to sign Daniel Jones next offseason as opposed to this one, because I think he's going to stay there, and he's going to work on rehabbing his image a bit before he leaves to come or go wherever he decides to go. That leaves one option left for the Indianapolis Colts, and it's the option that I would go with if I had to bet money on who the Indianapolis Colts were going to bring in to play quarterback next season. It would be Russell Wilson. He's a guy that makes a lot of sense for multiple reasons. Honestly, there's parts of this that it kind of feels like a match made in heaven. Okay, there are certain things that Russell Wilson does both on and off the field that I think the Colts are going to really like. And I'm going to tell you what those things are when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
The best takes, stories, and entertainment. It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you guys are having a nice week. Talking a little bit of Colts, who they're going to bring in to compete with Anthony Richardson this next season. It's going to be Russell Wilson. And I think it's a terrible idea. Okay? Let's start with why it's going to be Russell Wilson. Why would the Colts want to bring in the guy who only lasted 2 years in Denver, and then the Broncos paid him a whole bunch of money to go away, and then he went to the Steelers, and the Steelers were like, "Yeah, we'll pay you $2 million to compete for the starting job," and he did that, and then they're like, "You know what? $2 million is way too much for us to have to deal with you. Goodbye." So the reason why he's going to come in. First and foremost, he's not afraid of a quarterback competition. He just had one in Pittsburgh, and he won it over Justin Fields. Okay? That's the simple reality of it. And I'm sure he thinks that if he can beat out Justin Fields and he can beat out 48% completion percentage, Anthony Richardson. Okay? So the Colts have players that I think complement Russell Wilson pretty well. Russell Wilson, if you go back and you watch the Steelers this year, it was, short throws and chucking it deep vertically down the sideline. Like the Colts have receivers that will allow him to do that. Okay. He can throw the deep ball to Alec Pierce, Edey Mitchell. If he figures his stuff out, then, they can throw it deep to him, all of that kind of stuff. So we'll kind of see what it looks like. Cause like I said, I feel pretty confident that this is going to be the guy. Because on the field he fits, and off the field, I think the Colts are going to like what he brings. The Colts are going to want him because he, provides actual competition for Anthony Richardson. Okay, this is another guy where they can look to the media and be like, "See, we told you we were going to bring in some competition for Richardson, and we just did it." Okay, he also made the playoffs last year. Okay, he's got some pedigree. He won a Super Bowl a million years ago. Right. And then, of course, style wise, he fits with what they have from a personnel standpoint. The Colts want to run the ball and throw it deep. That's what the Steelers just did with Russell Wilson last year. And they got into the playoffs because of it. But here's the other thing. He also offers a lot of BS that Chris Ballard's going to love. Russell Wilson's one of the fakest leaders in the NFL. Okay. And Chris Ballard's going to love that. Like, what's better than one fake leader? The obvious answer is two. Chris Ballard loved DeForest Buckner standing at the podium at the end of the year talking about how important it is to bring in competition. DeForest Buckner, we need more competition in the locker room. That way, we all get better and, iron sharpens iron, all that stuff, And then I believe that Chris Ballard's words at his final press conference were, "I'm just glad he was man enough to say it." And you're going to get a lot of feel good, leader-esque quotes from Russell Wilson, and Chris Ballard is going to eat all of that up. But Russell Wilson's not a real leader. He's all about his image. Every single thing that he does. He wants to come off as this nice guy, who's a Christian and is a real family man. And look, I don't know the guy. Maybe he is that. But he has a track record of being full of himself and rubbing his teammates the wrong way. Pete Carroll and the Seahawks pushed him out of Seattle. Okay, that is what happened. He showed up in Denver and had his own office. He didn't have a locker in the locker room with the rest of his teammates. He had his own office. Okay. And you could blame that on Denver and be like, well, Denver was the team who gave it to him. Yeah. Well, Russell Wilson was the guy who asked for it. And imagine thinking that you were so above your teammates that you get your own office for your own locker. Of course, but your own office on the same level and floor as all the coaches. That's kind of insane. And in fact, he was so unbearable that after 2 years, they paid him a lot of money to go away. Okay, they paid him to go play for the Steelers. And then after 1 year, with the Steelers. Steelers are like, we're good. Paying you $2 million to play here this year was way too much money. We don't really want you back. Okay, and I know this because if they wanted him back, then they wouldn't have tried to trade for Trevor Lawrence. Okay, he also doesn't really care about his teammates beyond the opportunity to give a great speech before a game. And it's really funny. Like, if you watch those like Steeler pregame clips of him talking, like, you can just see all the eye rolls of just like, this guy, get a load of this guy. All like that's what you see. And so, like, he doesn't really care about his teammates. And, like, there's this. So, Marshawn Lynch, who's awesome. Love it when he does interviews because he's just going to be very honest. He went on Shannon Sharp's podcast, and they were talking about Russell Wilson and his time in Seattle and what went wrong because it ended very ugly. It was not good. Like, Richard Sherman does not like that dude. Marshawn Lynch clearly doesn't really care for that guy. Listen to this story told by Marshawn Lynch of everything that happened after one of their games against the Titans while Russell Wilson was in Seattle.
We was playing against Tennessee, and they had, they secondary wasn't, they wasn't good. And we were supposed to throw the ball for 500 yards or something like that. And, he didn't have a game. Russ didn't have a game that he wanted. And so, man, after the game, I did pretty good. You feel me? 2 tugs, 150 rushing, another 50 receiving. So after the game, just all of the hype building up, you supposed to do this and we gonna have it. It didn't work out that way. So, man, I reached out to our personnel dude and I like, hey, man, let me get Russ' number. Call him, holla at him. I'll call you back. So then, he called me back like, hey, did you, you get a call? I'm like, nah. He's like, nah, Russ just said he called you. I'm like, nah, I got a call from a blocked number. He's like, oh, that's him. I'm like,
he blocked his number.
I don't know if he blocked it or if, I don't know how it went. I just know it got a call from a blocked number. So when I called back and I'm just like, hey, bro, I ain't calling you as no media.
No fan, no stalker, bro. This me. I'm a teammate.
Shit. Like, I'm calling you. I'm telling you straight up, like, I'm calling you on some real. Like, I think this is the first time that I actually tried to have a conversation with Blood. So I'm like, yeah, you feel me? I know you didn't have a game that you wanted to have. I'm like, but look, check it out. That's what I'm here for. And And if the shoe on the other foot, I expect for it to be the same way.
Right.
Like, if we gotta, I'm here for you. You here for me. You feel me? You let me know, and we go like. And his response to me kind of was like,
So what exactly was his response? What did he say?
We ain't gonna get into all that, man. You feel me?
It was bad, huh?
Yeah. Considering
that you reached out,
that we on the same team, going for the same goal, and this was how you chose to respond to me. It was more so like, maybe you don't understand what I'm saying.
That's Marshawn Lynch telling a story about the time about just, what it's like playing with Russell Wilson. Marshawn Lynch had Russell Wilson's phone number blocked. He barely talked to the guy, a guy that he lined up with in the backfield every single game. He barely talked to. And Russell Wilson never made any sort of attempt to talk to him. And when Marshawn Lynch tried to be a good teammate, reached out to Russell Wilson, tried to encourage him, Russell Wilson didn't appreciate it, clearly. Okay, and for me, like, I just remember, when you play baseball, like, you have games where you go 0 for 4. That's just that is just the way that it is. And one of the best feelings is having a bad game and your teammates grabbing you and be like, hey, bro, like, you're cool, dude. You're fine. Like, we got you. It's great. And I couldn't imagine having a teammate try to encourage me after a bad game. I couldn't imagine trying to encourage a teammate after a bad game. And the response either way being anything but positive. Okay? And that's not the story that we were just told about Russell Wilson. And there's a pretty similar story as well that Richard Sherman tells on his podcast, where he talks about how he tried to book Russell Wilson, a guy that he was teammates with for a long time in Seattle. He tries to get him to come on. And Russell Wilson's like, nah, bro, you can talk to my people if if you want to book me. Like, good teammates, guys that aren't overly wrapped up in themselves don't do that, just like how guys that aren't overly wrapped up in themselves don't ask for their own office when they're playing for the Denver Broncos. Okay, guys that are too caught up in themselves, guys that are too worried about themselves do that. And Russell Wilson, once again, he's going to be the guy that the Colts bring in. Because, he fits the offense and all those things, and he's got some pedigree, but it's not going to end well. Okay, it ended poorly in Seattle for Russell Wilson. It ended poorly in Denver for him, and it ended rather quickly in Pittsburgh. Okay, and despite all of those red flags, Chris Ballard is going to bring him in. And it just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't, because he's going to show up, and he's just going to, cause more problems in that locker room. Okay, like that's what he's going to do. And Chris Ballard is just, he's desperate for anything to go his way. That's what he is. Okay. And, he's like the guy in college who dates a girl who just kind of sleeps around with everybody just because it makes him feel a little bit better about himself, even though in the long run, she's going to cheat or do whatever. And it's ultimately just going to make him feel worse. That's what signing Russell Wilson is going to be like for the Colts. Okay, Chris Ballard is just desperate to do anything right because he's got a long list. He's on a long losing streak right now. And he's going to bring in Russell Wilson because it's going to look good, even though it's probably going to make things worse than they already are. Moving on, Pacers playing against the Memphis Grizzlies tonight. Can't wait for this game. Pacers starting their season up once again. They're hosting Memphis, and they're a 2.5-point underdog as of last night. This game, I think, should be a lot of fun. Ja Morant, no matter what you think about him, fun to watch. Very athletic, fun to watch out in the open court. The Pacers should be very well rested, and the Grizzlies should also be well rested. This is going to be a fun game to watch Andrew Nembhard, because he's probably going to be the guy who guards Ja. And I got to be honest, I'm not worried about Ja Morant because he's not their best player. Their best player is Jaren Jackson Jr. Okay, the Grizzlies run a lot of their offense through him. And since he hasn't missed, games these past couple of years, he's improved dramatically. He can bring the ball up the floor. He's a good passer. He's extended his range. He's a pretty decent three-point shooter. Like, he was an all-star for a reason this year. He's their leading scorer. He takes more shots per game than Ja Morant does for a reason. He's also one of the better defensive players in the NBA. And so I am very intrigued to see how the Pacers try to deal with Jaren Jackson Jr., especially when Zach Edey's also on the floor. Like, Pascal Siakam on Jaren Jackson Jr. is just not a great matchup. It's just not. Miles Turner on Jaren Jackson Jr. isn't a great matchup either. And so he's going to be pretty problematic for the Indiana Pacers tonight. I will say, though, I like the Pacers. Okay, like, even though both of these teams I find to be incredibly similar. Dynamic point guards, young teams for the most part, deep teams. Like, the Pacers go like 9 or 10 guys deep. The Grizzlies, they do the exact same thing. And so I'm very excited to watch this game tonight for several different reasons. I expect for both teams to play well, but I do think that we're going to see a better version of Tyrese Halliburton these last couple years, or excuse me, these last few weeks leading up to the playoffs. Because I'm sure that during the break, time to rest, all that kind of stuff. But I'm sure he took time to watch film and figure out like what he's not doing very well. I'm sure that the Pacers have pointed out to him that he needs to get to the rim a little bit more. We'll see if he does that tonight with Zach Edey lurking, because Zach Edey, good player. Okay, and he's he should be playing tonight. He plays about 20 minutes a game. He usually starts, but not always. He's a good role player. That's what he is. Okay, he leads the Grizzlies in rebounding at 7.5 rebounds per game. It's a lot of rebounds if you're only playing 20 minutes a night. Okay, he's pretty tough to keep off the glass because he's huge and very physical. Okay, He sets good screens because he's huge and physical. Finishes around the bucket well because he's pretty large and has good touch. Half of his shots come right at the rim. He's making 77% of them. He's averaging a little under 10 points a game. Like, he's a good player. He blocks shots, because he's huge and disciplined. That's always one of the more impressive things about him at Purdue, right? Like, he never chased blocks because Purdue needed him on the floor for 35 minutes a game. But now in the NBA, because he's only playing 20 minutes a night, like, he's got a little more freedom to like chase blocks and go block shots because he's only playing 20 minutes a game and he has 6 fouls to play with. So I'm just excited because, if you listen to the show, then you know that I love the NBA and I love watching this Pacers team. They should be back at full strength. Miles Turner, he should be back tonight. It's a tough game to come back because he's gonna have to deal with Jaren Jackson Jr. and Zach Edey all night long, and that's just not a fun duo to have to deal with. So I'm excited to watch Edey. I'm excited to watch Miles Turner, like how he kind of performs tonight. Halliburton, just come out aggressive. That's really, it's not all I want to see, but it's a pretty major part of it. Parker Fleming, who has a Substack dedicated to the Grizzlies, he's going to come on the show tomorrow at 11, and we're going to talk about the game coming up here in about 25 minutes. Joe Jackson, who covers the Big Ten, he's going to come on the show. He always does a pretty nice job. So when we come back, though, Pacers and Grizzlies is not the only thing going on tonight. We don't talk hockey on this show ever. But Four Nations, the championship event, is tonight. It's in Boston. It's Team USA against Team Canada. I can't wait. I don't think I've ever said that about a hockey game. I've never said I can't wait to watch hockey tonight. And I just said that because I'm genuinely excited about it. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, we'll talk a little Four Nations.
Unadulterated sports talk with unfiltered takes. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you guys are having a nice week. Tomorrow, Friday, can't wait. IU, Purdue, the rematch. Sunday, can't wait for that either. But let's start with what's going on tonight. Four Nations, the NHL's big all-star event that has people in a hockey frenzy starts tonight. And look, I don't talk a ton of hockey. I've been wanting to get into hockey. It hasn't gone very well. Usually, so when I was in college, I wanted to get into Premier League soccer, and I did a little bit. And the way that I did it was I picked a team, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to watch them. Okay? Liverpool, go Reds. Okay? And, that's kind of how it happened, right? And so hockey, I was like, I'll do the same thing. The issue is I picked the Seattle Kraken, and they don't play till like 10:30. And I'm just like, I'm not staying up till 10:30. It's also during basketball season, and I would rather watch the NBA than the NHL. With that being said, I will be tuning in tonight for Four Nations because it's Team USA against Team Canada, the future 51st state. And it's going to be magnificent because it's in Boston. They're going to boo the crap out of the Canadian national anthem. And we're going to have a whole bunch of fights in a pretty short amount of time. It's going to be great. Okay, like it is, the fighting is one of the aspects of hockey that just makes it so unique to every other sport. It does. And we're going to get multiple fights tonight, and it's going to be awesome. And I can't wait. Okay? I don't know who's going to win. I know that Team USA is favored by 1.5 goals, and I know it's going to be fun. That's what I know. Okay? There's going to be fights. We're going to experience, some of the best players in hockey on the ice going at it. And that's really what I want to see. Okay. I don't know if the game's going to be good, but I know that it's going to be incredibly entertaining. And that's really all that I want from my sports. Just be entertaining. Okay. Let the games be close. All right. Give me fights like this. Okay. I just want entertaining because that's what sports are supposed to be. Okay. There's been a lot of discussion around, the NBA and, ratings and all of those things. And, they need to fix All-Star Weekend, which I would argue not really because they, just signed a $76 billion TV deal over the next 11 years. But, All-Star Weekend, yeah, fix that. Anyway, one of the reasons why the NFL is king is because, their product is just tailored for television. Okay, they make rule adjustments pretty quickly. The new kickoff rule, I like it. I'm sure there's some people out there who don't. But, it's great. I think it's great because it's a real play now. And if it, year one of this experiment of lining up like that had flopped, then they would have changed the rule back for this next season. Do you remember when, the Rams beat the Saints in the NFC title game? And it was super controversial because, the Rams dude just spears the Saints receiver and they don't call pass interference, even though it was pretty clearly pass interference. And then the following year, they're like, you know what? You can challenge pass interference from here on out. And the rule was, it was a terrible idea. It did not go well. And they just immediately changed the rule right back for the next season. The adaptability of the NFL is part of what makes it rate so well and is so entertaining. Other sports, they don't really have that. I will say that this is a big win for hockey because during the fall, when all of that is going on, when football season is in full swing, football just owns it. In the fall, Sunday night, college football Saturday, Monday night, Thursday night. Those nights belong to football. They do. Simple as that. If you want to put something on Tuesday or Wednesday or Friday, go right ahead. Okay? Even though the NFL is going to figure out some sort of way to put an NFL game on every night of the week. Okay? That's going to happen here at some point. Okay? But in the offseason for the NFL, it feels like all these other sports are trying so hard to own the calendar. Okay, baseball, They should probably adjust theirs a little bit because, they play baseball games at, like the World Series is like on Sunday nights at 9:00. And it's like, sorry, man, like I'm watching Ravens Steelers, not that. Right. But hockey, to their credit, they're going to own this weekend going forward. Like their All-Star break is going to trounce the NBA every single year because it's fun. It is legitimately entertaining. And I'm assuming that they're going to continue with this, right? And they're going to own this stretch of time in the calendar year every single year because of it, because the NBA refuses to get out of their way. But Sunday, however, and I'm going to talk to Joe Jackson about this coming up here in about 15 minutes. Sunday, Purdue and IU is going to own televisions in the state of Indiana. Okay, from noon to 1:30, I'll probably watch, I believe, UConn and St. John's play again. I'll probably watch that until 1:30, and then once 1:30 hits, I am changing the channel, and I'm going to watch Purdue and IU. Okay, the intensity of this game should be, it may not be, but it should be off the charts. Okay, Indiana needs this game to make the tournament. Purdue is trying to avoid 4 straight losses because, like being a 2 seed is still very much in play for them. And, IU obviously doesn't want to get swept by Purdue. Okay, the first time that these teams played, I discussed a little bit, like, do these transfers, like, understand the rivalry? And I got to go to that game up there in West Lafayette in Mackey. And, yes, they do. Like, those guys were very much engaged in that game. And, whenever teams rematch, during the season, I like to point out the biggest differences. And there's a pretty big one for Indiana. Malik Renew. He fouled out the last time that they played in 8 minutes. That's a really quick way to foul out. And, people were pretty tough on him for it, as they should be. Okay. But it was also his 3rd game back from, the knee injury. And he hadn't quite gotten back into rhythm at that point. Like when he first came back from that knee injury, I mean, it was brutal. Like missing shots right at the rim, and he just didn't look very smooth, and it just was bad basketball. No other way to really put it. And as of late, he's starting to play a little bit better. Okay, he scored 14 points or more in 3 straight games. Like, that's a pretty solid number for him, and he's doing it on 50% shooting from the field. Okay, so he's starting to score the ball a little bit more. He's efficient in doing so, and that's just so much better than, when he came back from the injury. Like, his first game back was against Northwestern. He was 0 for 6, and he scored 2 points. And then they played in Maryland, and he was 5 of 14, and he scored 10 points, which isn't great. And then they played Purdue, and he scored 3 points. He only played 8 minutes because he fouled out so fast. And then they played Wisconsin, and he was, fine, 3 of 6 from the floor, 6 rebounds, 6 points in about 17 minutes. And then from that point forward, like, he was really good. Like, he was good against Michigan. He was good against Michigan State. Huge against Michigan State. And then against UCLA, he only played 21 minutes, but he scored 14 points and was 5 of 7 from the floor in those 21 minutes. Like, he has found a rhythm, and he's going to have a big impact on this game when they host Purdue at home on Sunday. Okay? And I can't wait to really see what they look like. Because if he can be another solid offensive option for Purdue, and if he can stay out of foul trouble, then Indiana is going to have a great chance to win this game, because we've seen Purdue, in these last 3 games, really struggle with size. And Indiana is, once again, like, they are bigger than Purdue. Purdue struggled with their size in that first game. Okay? And if you think back to what happened in that game, that first time Indiana played Purdue, Indiana couldn't quite close out Purdue because they just didn't have enough offense to make it happen. In the final 5 minutes of that game, Indiana went on an 18-9 run. Okay, look, if you only scored 9 points in 5 minutes against a team like Purdue that can really score it, you're not going to beat them. Like, it's not going to happen. It won't. And, Indiana's offense down the stretch of that game was just bad. No other way to put it. Miles Rice takes that terrible shot to try and take the lead. That's another aspect of this game that I'm very intrigued to see, because Miles Rice has been a lot better here as of late. Like, he has been. He's playing more minutes. He's not turning the ball over. He's taking, better shots. I'm not going to say that they're all great, but like, he's been better here as of late. He's not turning the ball over. And yeah, like he's another guy who is going to just give, Indiana just a little bit more punch to maybe get over the hump against this really good Purdue basketball team. And then for Purdue, they're the exact same team. No one on that team has really gotten better, which is kind of disappointing, because I really like CJ Cox, a good player who can, really handle the ball. He can shoot it. The issue, I wouldn't even call it, issue's not the right word, but the problem in terms of developing these other players is no one has the ball except for Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Renn. And so many times, because their offense demands it, they just kind of spread the floor, move everybody out of the way, and they run a ball screen to Braden Smith's right hand, with Trey Kaufman-Renn being the screener. And if that doesn't work, then they throw the ball inside to Trey Kaufman-Renn, and he goes and he scores, because he's just been on another level here as of late. And so, like, you have this Indiana team that I think has gotten a little bit better since that game against Purdue, just, with the emergence of Malik Renew and with Miles Rice just being a little more consistent, not turning the ball over, something that Indiana just in general has been better at since that game. Like, I think they're going to have a little more. I don't think I'm going to take Purdue to win. Or excuse me, I don't think I'm going to take Indiana to win, because I'm just going to keep saying this until it's true. I don't think Matt Painter's going to lose 4 games in a row. I don't think it is. Okay. John Buzzard chiming in on Twitter @__ Jonathan Smith. If you want to tweet at me there to be part of the show. He said, I've never seen Purdue get out rebounded like they did against IU. That'll be the biggest thing I'm watching. If Purdue clears the boards defensively and can get into some kind of transition to get an easy bucket, that's ideal. Totally agree. And that was the difference in the second half of that game. Like, I think Indiana had, if I remember correctly, they had 13 offensive rebounds in the first half alone. And they just got so many more shots up than Purdue did. And then in the second half, Purdue did a much better job of keeping them off the offensive glass. And this once again comes back to Malik Renew, a guy who's a pretty solid rebounder. If he plays more than 8 minutes in that game, do they not rebound the ball as well offensively? Or excuse me, do they rebound the ball better offensively with him in the game late down the stretch when the offense wasn't really clicking in the way that it needed to be? So very intrigued to kind of see what all that is going to look like. Joe Jackson, who does a lot of media work, he's got a Substack where he writes about the Big Ten called Feed the Post, which is perfect because, like, every Big Ten team throws the ball in the post, and then you watch the SEC, and there's like no post touches. It's just watching conferences and how differently they all play is always fun. But Joe Jackson, he's going to join the show. He also hosts a podcast called Boilers in the Stands. So he is a Purdue guy. So we'll talk a little bit about why Purdue has lost 3 in a row and how much better this team would be if Daniel Jacobson never really gets hurt. And then we'll talk about Indiana, why they can't really seem to close out these games. And we'll talk a little bit about Malik Renew and why he's been better here as of late. And then we'll kind of get a bird's eye view of the Big Ten. Who's good enough to win? Who's going to win the Big Ten? Is it going to be Michigan? That's kind of what it feels like right now. And, we'll just kind of see how things go from there. So Joe Jackson always does a good job covering the Big Ten. Thanks for tuning in, by the way, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket, if you want to head over there and subscribe. Maybe you're watching on Twitter @__ Jonathan Smith, or maybe you're listening via that Indy Sports Ticket app. No matter how you're listening, I greatly, greatly Appreciate it. When we come back here in about 5 minutes or so, Joe Jackson is going to join the show.
It's time for the real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? It's the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. I think Joe Jackson's on the line. Joe, is that you?
Yes, it is.
What's going on, man? How are you? You're on the air,
good.
by the way.
How are you? All right, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing pretty well, man. Thanks for joining the show. Joe joining to talk a little bit of Big Ten hoops. Obviously, Purdue and IU, they rematch on Sunday. But, Joe, before we get into that, I'm curious because, I don't know if you've seen this or not, but the whole Four Nations hockey event, people seem to really enjoy. Are you going to watch that tonight?
Most likely not. I'll be going to the Pacers game because Zach Edey's in town. So that's my plans for tonight.
Okay, nice. Do you have, before we jump into Big Ten hoops, what are your thoughts on Zach Edey and his progress so far in the NBA?
Yeah, I mean, it's been good to see, right? He's had the rookie bumps that come along and, for pretty much every single rookie. But it's been really cool to see him just develop into a legitimate player in the NBA. And, I think for me, I always knew he at least had a really good chance, right? You never know specifically player to player, right? Even some of the best players can end up being bust. But just given what he showed his senior year at Purdue, I was just like, he's good enough to have a legit chance, and I think he's taken full advantage. And right, I don't know if he'll win Rookie of the Year, but he'll be top 3 probably in voting. And as somebody that's just been, I followed his whole career at Purdue, it's been really, really cool to see.
Yeah, it has been. And look, man, like when you're that big and coordinated, like you should be able to play in the NBA. Joined by Joe Jackson from Boiler in the Stands and the Feed the Post Substack, where he talks, Big Ten hoops. I want to start with Purdue. Why have they lost 3 in a row?
Defense. It's pretty much been it. And right, the offense hasn't been awesome except for the Wisconsin game, but the defense has just been straight up awful. Like there's no way to sugarcoat it. You give up against Wisconsin, they allow Wisconsin to go 20 of 22 from 2. Against Michigan State, Michigan State made I think 28 shots on the game. 20 of them came at the rim, whether it be layups or dunks. You cannot have that happen at any level, but especially at the Big Ten level, and expect to win. Now, Purdue has Braden Smith and TKR who are so good that they can keep them in ball games, but Braden Smith didn't have an awesome game against Michigan State, 6 turnovers. TKR also had 3 turnovers. If you're going to play the defense, like if the defense is going to be as poor as it was, you pretty much have to play perfect offensively. Like against Wisconsin, they were 1.29 points per possession. That should win you every ball game, and they ended up losing by 10. So it's the defense to me. Like the interior defense, I don't think they've applied as much perimeter pressure. And so if the perimeter pressure isn't there, they aren't forcing turnovers. And then if they aren't forcing turnovers, it's kind of what their defense is built on now, is trying to force turnovers and create havoc. When that doesn't happen, now you see teams like Michigan, Wisconsin, Michigan State be able to get to the paint, be able to kind of do what they want at will and, convert at a high rate.
Yeah, and you talk about just the lack of, protection at the rim. Like Caleb First is good. He plays really hard, but he doesn't protect the rim super well. Is there an answer for Purdue's lack of size?
No, I don't think, not like, I mean, the answer is Daniel Jacobson, and he went down in game number 2. But with the current roster and current rotation, like, I don't think so. I do think it's just having to get back to being able to apply more pressure. The guards have to be better, but also just, right, TKR can't – it's a tough balance because TKR can't get in foul trouble. And we saw that last game, right? Last 3 games, he's been in foul trouble, and it's just given Purdue issues. He is so important to this team, but at the same time, he hasn't been great defensively, especially over this last few games. At times, he is the center, and he really does have to try to protect the rim. First, at least when he's out there, they use him more as like, switch everything on the perimeter. You're 6'11", but move really well and athletic. Like, try to just create havoc that way. And then maybe if you're in position, you can try to protect the rim. But Purdue just doesn't have a true rim protector at this point. And it's just, it really is more of just their defense is designed. They try to take away shots at the rim just by having the bodies there. And especially against Michigan State and Wisconsin, the bodies just weren't there. And so now nobody's there. Then teams are getting good looks because Purdue just doesn't have a true rim protector.
Joined by Joe Jackson, who covers Purdue on the Boiler in the Stands podcast. He also has a Substack called Feed the Post, where he covers the entire Big Ten. How much? So you brought up Jacobson, who, as you mentioned, he went out for the year in the second game. How much better would he make this team?
We got to work under the assumption that he's going to live up to if he lived up to some of the hype kind of coming into this year, I think he at least gives them a steadying force, right, at the 5 spot, where I don't know, he still probably only plays maybe 20 minutes a game. But during those 20 minutes, Purdue can kind of change how they want to play defensively, where Jacobson can actually protect the rim and they can play more the style that they would like to, while still, I think at this point, having the perimeter pressure. I'm not going to say he's vaults them to Auburn Duke category or anything of that, but I do think he positively would impact the team in his minutes. Just give them a true big body. They don't have that. Berg hasn't worked out, although Berg, he only played like 3 minutes, but I did like his minutes against Michigan State. But no, I think Jacobson would give them the true body that they actually want down low to help protect the rim. And then you just assume, right, he had upside offensively. I think it would have. I don't know if it's fair to say they win 1 or 2 more games if he's in, because they've had a couple close losses, but something along those lines, I would say.
Okay, yeah, I think that's probably where I'm at with it, because even if he plays 15 minutes, 15 minutes of having a guy who can actually protect the rim would be huge for Purdue this year, because they don't really have it at all. Joined by Joe Jackson, who covers Purdue on the Boiler in the Stands podcast, also writes the Feed the Post Substack. You should definitely check out both of those things. So you mentioned earlier how Trey Kaufman-Renn and Braden Smith are so good that they're able to kind of keep Purdue in every game that they play, which I totally agree with. And I'm going to ask you a question that may not make a lot of sense, but I think that in previous years, we see Purdue role players get better throughout the course of the season. I don't feel like we've had that as much this year. Could that be because Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Renn have the ball too much?
It's an interesting question, and we've on my show we've asked that a couple times throughout the year. It's right. You basically, I think what I've came up with that answer, especially early in the year, right, where it was you could try to get those guys more reps. The other guys, you're probably sacrificing at that point today's success for future success is kind of the hope, where you maybe drop 1 or 2 more early in the season just by trying to get the guys involved. But then in theory, they're more capable and more ready later. But that's also not a guarantee. And so it's a tough spot, I think, because in my opinion, Braden Smith's the best point guard in the entire country. Why would you want to take the ball out of his hands? And then TKR is the perfect complementary piece to Braden Smith, and their 2-man game is also arguably the best in the entire country. And so it's a tough balance, right? Because it's why, they're so good. Why would you take the ball out of their hands? But at the same time, I do think it is fair of try to get, CJ Cox and Jakari Harris going. And I know Colvin and Heidi have really struggled in their opportunities. It makes sense to try to get them going. It also, to me, makes sense of hey, no, just college basketball is a 31 game regular season. You can't really afford losses along the way or unnecessary losses along the way. So you just got to play to win every single game. So you put the ball in your best player's hands. So I know that's not a definitive answer, but it's been one that on my show we talked about all year. It's a tough. I think it's been a really, really tough balance. And at this point, you kind of just who you are. Yeah,
I agree. I just, part of me why I think about it probably way too much is I really like CJ Cox. I think he can do a little bit more than what Purdue is allowing him to do, in part because he just doesn't have the ball. Do you Do you kind of recognize that with him as well, or do you still just kind of see him as like this really good, scrappy defender who can spot up and knock down a three?
No, I'm with you. I think he can definitely, he has shown he can create his shot. He's definitely more of just a pure jump shooter in terms of like one dribble pull up, things like that. But like Purdue needs that at times, especially when TKR is off the floor, if CJ is in, like Purdue needs some sort of secondary creator. Loyer can be that at times 100%. But even he, like Loyer's very, very good. I think he gets a little bit underrated. He has his flaws for sure. But right, TJ is another guy that just could go create a shot. And you're right. He just isn't given the opportunities too much to be able to do that. I mean, he showed the Bama game early on. He basically won Purdue that game in a 1.5-minute stretch where he just drilled like 4 straight shots. He has it in him. It's just been, the opportunity has been inconsistent. And then I do think it is a little bit tough to get in rhythm when you don't have consistent opportunities.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Joined by Joe Jackson, who covers Purdue on the Boiler in the Stands podcast. Also writes about Purdue on the Feed the Post Substack. You have a YouTube channel as well, also called Feed the Post, correct?
Yes, I do.
Okay, all right. Check out all those things. Joe does just an excellent job breaking down games and film. So I want to move to Indiana now because, we have a segment on my show on Wednesdays. We call it Over the Hump Day, because Mike Woodson is just all about getting his teams over the hump. And he can never quite figure it out. Why can't Indiana close out these close games?
I wish I knew that question, the full answer to that question, because, and I'm sure Mike Woodson also wishes he knew that answer, but it's been wild to see how many just boneheaded mistakes they've made, right? And Miles Rice has had a few, right? They just, plays haven't been designed, and then just things like that. And then like the UCLA one, Mbako misses a wide open shot. That one you can live with at least, right? He got a wide open look, probably should have made it, but at the end of the day, it's a make or miss. Basketball's a make or miss sport, and you miss so well. But yeah, it's been really, really weird to see. It felt like it kind of summarizes I think it summarizes the whole year of like, hey, there's talent. Hey, they can be good. Hey, they can put it together for stretches. But at their core, they're just kind of not a cohesive unit. And it is just a lot of, I think at times, guys just going out there and trying to do their thing. Not like selfishly or anything like that. It's just kind of how they're playing basketball. And so now you get into these late game spots where you really do have to be in unison. You really do have to be cohesive. And they just, between the coaching and then some of the players and personnel and stuff, like it just seems like it doesn't always translate to the best output. And now that's why, they've lost 6 of their last 7. And I think 5 of those have been single digits. Really every single game they had a legit chance to win except for the Wisconsin one. And so you can't obviously go back and rewrite history, but it is interesting to think like they get a couple bounces there, right? Then maybe they're 8-7 in Big Ten play, and they're like in a prime spot to make the tournament somehow still.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like there's somehow, some way, like you said, in a prime spot to make the tournament, which, like you've watched IU play this year, and there's a push to kind of expand the tournament. And I'm like, I don't know. I feel like if Purdue or if Indiana is still in a position to make it, like I don't think that we should expand it. What's it going to take for IU to make the tournament? Do they need to win out? Do they need to win out and win a couple games in the Big Ten tournament? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it'll probably depend on this Purdue game. That's their biggest game left by far. If they can win that puts them at 7-9 in Big Ten play. So probably 4-1. If I were to guess, 4-1 over this last 5 would guarantee. And I'm not a bracketologist, so don't. If they go 4-1 and miss, don't it is what it is. But that would be my 4-1 with a win over Purdue would guarantee to me almost. 4-1 with the one loss being to Purdue, I think you still feel solid. 3-2 down the stretch, you probably want to pick up a game, at least one in the Big Ten tournaments. And again, it'll depend a bit on matchups and things like that. But they have a chance. Now, They have Purdue, Oregon, and Ohio State are 3 tougher games. Penn State and Washington, those are must wins at this point. So if they lose either of those, it's probably over just because those are going to be not great losses. But they've shown they are in every single game. Just if they can get on the right side of it, it's not impossible to me.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Like, there's still just a little bit of hope. Joined by Joe Jackson from Boiler in the Stands, also writes a Substack called Feed the Post, has a YouTube channel called Feed the Post as well, where he does a really good job just breaking down games within the Big Ten. What should we expect from the IU and Purdue game on Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, I assume it'll be another just close game, which is good for. I think that's just best for the rivalry, right? Like last year, the games were they weren't that fun. Like they were blowouts and Purdue dominated. But this year, the first game was pretty fun, and I would expect that to happen again. The one concern is that Purdue, has lost 3 in a row. That hasn't happened in 6 years, and now they're going to have actual rest coming into this game. I know IU is going to have an insane amount of rest. They have 9 days rest, but there is always that concern that Purdue can just have one of those games. Now, usually these happen in Mackey, so I think there's that going for Indiana where it probably does end up being closer. But Purdue has shown they just have these games where it's you walk in and you lose. Purdue is just going to win this game. There's always that chance, but I do think it'll be close. We saw Mbako get going against Purdue now in the first matchup. Now I do expect Purdue to probably adjust the matchup a bit. They have Warrior on him. They'll start with Warrior on him still, but then once they go, Goody's starting now, right? So,
yes, yeah.
Yeah, they'll probably start Warrior on Goody because Goody wasn't starting at that point. So they'll probably start Warrior on Goody. They'll probably put first on Mbako and try to switch it up that way and try to disrupt him. And then from there, right, just try to contain. IU made a lot of jumpers, I think, in that first game, if I'm remembering correctly, where Goody and Mbako both got going early. Purdue's going to try to limit that, but at the same time, Purdue's defense has been absolutely reeling. So IU can probably still take advantage, and Purdue's going to do their thing on the other end. I think if IU wins, it's probably a fairly high scoring game. Would be my guess.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm expecting. I'm intrigued to see how, kind of like what you were saying, how Purdue deals with Mbako, because he had 25 last time. Just he really had it going. And when you look at the Purdue roster, for me, the obvious answer is Camden Heide, but he's kind of struggled offensively this year. Why do you think Heidi's kind of had the struggles that he's had this year?
It's been really confusing because, right, obviously nobody is trying to miss shots or anything like that. He is not trying to miss shots. I think he still plays hard. I think he still does some positive things, both defensively on them, glass. He's just missing open jumpers. I'm looking at the stats now. He's 12 of 38 on open catch and shoot threes, 31%. That's in the bottom 30 percentile for the entire country. Sometimes you just I don't forget what I read, or the IU end games, right? Your make or miss sport for Purdue or for basketball, and Camden Heide's just on the missing side of that right now, and really, really struggling from 3. And then now I think at this point for sure leaked into some confidence issues where you see him hesitate on some shots and you see him pass up some shots that probably should still just take. Even last game, right? He went 2 of 3 from 3 against Michigan State. There were a couple times he still just passed up open looks, and it's well, you got to shoot those. You have to shoot those. I don't think Purdue cares that you're 7 of 33 from 3 in Big Ten play. Keep shooting because they know what you can be as a shooter. And Painter has mentioned this, not this year, but just in past years of you are doing your team a disservice by passing up good looks, right? Everybody's doing their part to get good looks for the team. And if you pass up a good look, you're just wasting your teammates' effort. And so missing obviously just isn't fun. And then it's crept into confidence issues. And then it's just kind of spiraled from there. He is 3 of his last 6. Obviously that is insanely small sample size, but
yeah.
If there is going to be any hope, you can maybe point to that and be all right, maybe he's going to start turning this thing around.
we like hope. We do. Joined by Joe Jackson, who does an excellent job covering Big Ten hoops. You can read his stuff on the Feed the Post Substack. If you're a Purdue fan, you can check him out on the Boiler in the Stands podcast. You can also watch him on YouTube at the Feed the Post YouTube channel. Couple more questions for you, Joe, and I will let you go. It seems like Michigan or Michigan State is going to win the Big Ten, but I think Wisconsin's playing better than anyone else in the conference right now. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. The other team I would throw in is Maryland. I think you're right with Wisconsin. Like, Wisconsin is just on an absolute tear. I also think, just if you look at the schedules, Wisconsin has a sneaky chance to at least share for the Big Ten title, right? Michigan still has Michigan State twice, Illinois, Maryland, at Nebraska, and then home against Rutgers, not in that order. Michigan State has Michigan twice, obviously. Maryland also have Wisconsin and at Iowa. Wisconsin's only tough game really left is at Michigan State. If they can win that, the rest of their games are Oregon, Washington, Minnesota, and Penn State. There's a sneaky chance they could kind of creep into the Big Ten title contentions. But getting back to the original question, yes, I'm like, Wisconsin has been often they have been the best team in the Big Ten over the last couple weeks for sure. The offense is just awesome. John Tonje is, I don't think he wins Big Ten Player of the Year, but he is at least at this point starting to give Braden Smith a little bit of a run. Wisconsin's offense is just built perfectly. Like, they have 5 shooters on the floor pretty much at every single point in time. They have multiple guards and wings that can drive, pass, shoot. They have bigs that can pass. They have guys that can post up. They can run a little bit. They have Tonje can score from anywhere on the floor, draws a lot of fouls. They're an elite free throw shooting team, the best in college basketball history. Like, you can't really poke a hole in this offense. And then the defense is what it is. It's fine. It's not bad. It's not awesome, but it's solid. And that's all they need given their offense. And so they beat Illinois by 21, Purdue by 10. They're on this 5-game winning streak. Like, there's a lot to like about this Wisconsin team.
Yeah, like you said, they look so good right now. Like, peaking at the right time. It kind of feels like they are. Last thing for you, Joe, and I'll let you go. Who do you think the best team in college basketball is?
I still just lean Auburn, and maybe it's because it's Auburn or Duke to me. I lean Auburn, and maybe it's just swayed by the fact I watch Auburn 30-piece Purdue. But
yeah.
It's just that off. Like, I really don't know how you stop them offensively, other than hoping they miss some shots. Like, they're another team just cannot poke holes in their offense, and then their defense is also really, really good. I think it's a toss-up between them, but like, if you ask me to pick one, I'll go Auburn.
Yeah, watch. So I'm an Arkansas fan, just kind of full disclosure on this. So I watched them play last night, and Arkansas should have won that game, but got to make your free throws. And I think my answer for stopping Auburn is be very athletic and just very large, because that's exactly what they are. And length and athleticism can always kind of throw an offense off a bit. And that's what I thought, Arkansas did a really good job of last night. Okay, Joe, last thing for real. I always do this. I'm sorry.
You're good.
Would you take an SEC team to win the whole thing or the field?
Oh,
It's tough.
that's a really good question, because I immediately did not have an answer. Give me an SEC team, I think. Right, because I think honestly it's a pretty good question. Because if we're talking realistic title contenders, there's definitely a few outside the SEC, like Houston, Duke, right? And then if there's any Big Ten team you trust, but at the same time, I don't know if there is a Big Ten team you really, really trust. So I'll take the SEC.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm at. Because like you said, like I made a list yesterday. I think there's 10 teams, and that might be generous, like 10 teams that can win the whole thing, and half of them are in the SEC. It's just that conference is just stupid this year. Joe, thanks for your time, man, as always.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on.
See ya. That is Joe Jackson. You can follow him on Twitter at Joe Jackson CBB. You can check out all of his stuff. It's all linked there in his bio. When we come back here in about 4.5 minutes or so, we're going to talk Colts and who they're going to bring in to challenge Anthony Richardson for that starting quarterback position.
Often imitated, never duplicated. The Real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you guys are having a nice week. Tomorrow's Friday. Can't wait for Friday. Thanks to Joe Jackson for joining me in that last segment, talking a little bit of Big Ten hoops. We're going to talk a little bit of Indianapolis Colts. We're going to run through all the quarterbacks that aren't going to come to Indy to compete with Anthony Richardson, because let's just be honest. They're scared to compete with Anthony Richardson. They know they aren't going to beat him out for that starting quarterback job. So let's start with, Mr. Media, Aaron Rodgers. He's not coming. Okay? Like, I would be very surprised for multiple reasons. First and foremost, he wants to go somewhere where he can win a Super Bowl. Okay? And Indianapolis is not that place. The question is a team that can win a Super Bowl going to want him? I don't think so. But I also think that the Colts don't want to have to deal with him. Okay, like they probably don't like putting up with Zaire Franklin's podcast. And I find it highly unlikely that they want to deal with both Zaire Franklin's podcast and Aaron Rodgers going on the Pat McAfee show every Tuesday where he can spew more nonsense. The other thing, Pat McAfee and Aaron Rodgers are great friends. Do you after what happened last year? I don't think Pat McAfee is going to encourage Aaron Rodgers to come play football here. Okay, like if Aaron Rodgers is smart, and I think he's a little nutty, but I do think he's smart. He'll ask Pat McAfee about the franchise. But hey, is Indianapolis, is that a franchise worth playing at? And if Aaron Rodgers was to ask Pat McAfee that question, Pat McAfee would not give the Colts a good review. That would not happen after everything that happened last season with all the drama between the team and Pat McAfee. Another quarterback on the list of potential candidates to come in and compete with Anthony Richardson to be the starter next year is Justin Fields. Okay, because he's not the Colts guy. Okay, he'd have to thoroughly outplay Anthony Richardson in camp to be named the starter, because the Colts want to play Anthony Richardson. Like, no NFL team wants to be wrong about a first-round draft pick, especially the number 4 overall pick. Okay, like the Colts don't want to be wrong about Anthony Richardson. Okay, they firmly believe that he has not had enough time to figure out whether or not he can play. So I think Justin Fields, knowing this, would look at the Colts and be like, I could also just go to Las Vegas. Like, I know I'm better than Aiden O'Connell and Desmond Ridder and Gardner Minshew. Like, I could just go there and be the favorite to start from day one. I think Justin Fields would enjoy that for a change. Okay, Sam Darnold, another guy on this list, he's not coming because the Colts simply aren't going to pay him enough. And he also probably wants to go to a place where he can win instead of be mediocre year in and year out, because that's what he has been. Okay, and the Colts are going to have an opportunity to bring Sam Darnold in. The issue is Chris Ballard's the type of guy to go to the grocery store and purchase all of the off-brand, things on his grocery list. That way he can save $20 at the checkout. He's not going to overpay for anything. He's not. And in order for Sam Darnold to come here, I think the Colts would have to overpay him. And Chris Ballard he doesn't overpay for anything. So I don't think that Sam Darnold is going to come here to Indianapolis. Matthew Stafford, he's not coming because he's still good enough to win a Super Bowl. And the Colts roster isn't good enough to win a Super Bowl. It's just not. Okay, I firmly believe that Matthew Stafford's going to wind up in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, a team that was willing to trade their first and second round pick in this year's draft for Trevor Lawrence. Okay, and it's been reported that the asking price for Matthew Stafford is a first round pick. And the Steelers should, and I think they're going to, jump at the chance to bring him in. For the Colts, they need more than just a quarterback. They need multiple positions. Matthew Stafford makes them better, obviously, but he doesn't elevate them to a Super Bowl contender. Okay, and that's going to be the place where Matthew Stafford ends up, a place where he feels like he can win a Super Bowl. And he does that for other teams. So I don't see him coming here to Indianapolis. And then the last option for the Colts in terms of who they can bring in is Daniel Jones. But I don't think he's going to leave the Vikings. He's going to do the Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold went to San Francisco, sat under Kyle Shanahan for a year, and then left because it rehabilitated his image a little bit. That's what Daniel Jones is going to do in Minnesota this year. He's going to be there for a year. He's going to back up J.J. McCarthy or Sam Darnold or whoever winds up being the starter. And, being under Kevin O'Connell for a year because everyone loves Kevin O'Connell, even though he's never won a playoff game, that will restore his image around the NFL a bit. And then he'll go somewhere else as a changed quarterback. And then we'll find out whether or not he's really changed the same way that Sam Darnold did after a year of sitting under Kyle Shanahan. The player that the Colts are going to bring in to compete with Anthony Richardson is Russell Wilson. That's the guy. And I'll tell you why when we come back here in about 3 minutes.
Unfiltered takes live here. The Real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy's Sports Ticket, if you want to head over there and subscribe. You can also watch on Twitter, __ Jonathan Smith, if you want to follow me there. Or you can listen to me, that Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you get your apps. The Indianapolis Colts are bringing in Russell Wilson to be their starting quarterback, or to compete with Anthony Richardson to be the starting quarterback. That is who I expect for them to bring in. It makes a lot of sense for multiple reasons. He's not afraid of competition. He had one in Pittsburgh, and he beat Justin Fields out for it. And I'm sure that he thinks that if he can beat out Justin Fields, then he can beat out 48% completion percentage Anthony Richardson. Okay, the Colts have players that complement what Russell Wilson does well. He can throw the ball short. He can chuck it deep. Okay, the Colts have receivers that will allow him to do that. Okay, and the Colts will want him because he provides a legitimate competition for Anthony Richardson. Chris Ballard can sit back and say, hey, look, see? Legitimate competition right there, right in front of your face. Okay, like there it is. He's got some pedigree. He won a Super Bowl a long time ago. Style-wise, he fits. As I just mentioned, from a personnel standpoint, I think what he does well, the Colts have what they need. Okay, the Colts want to run the football and throw it deep. That's what the Pittsburgh Steelers just did with Russell Wilson, and they had some success. He also offers a lot of BS for the Colts to buy into, and this is why I don't want him here. Like I would much rather have a lot of those guys above him. I would rather have Justin Fields or obviously Sam Darnold or obviously Matthew Stafford, because those guys seem pretty like, let's show up and like, let's play football. Russell Wilson shows up and is like, where's the camera? And can I give a speech in front of the camera? That way the people in the media like me. Like Russell Wilson is a fake leader. And I think Chris Ballard would gobble that up. I mean, what's better than one fake leader? Two, clearly. Okay, Chris Ballard loved DeForest Buckner's comments at the end of the year about bringing in competition. And Chris Ballard at his end of the year press conference said, I'm glad he was man enough to say it. All right, man. And you're going to get a lot of quotes about competition and things like that from Russell Wilson. And Chris Ballard is going to eat that stuff up while all the players in that Colts locker room just roll their eyes. Okay? Russell Wilson is all about his image. All right? He wants to come off as this nice Christian family man who, is a leader of men and all those things. He's going to get all, philosophical whenever he's talking to people. And like, that's who he is. And look, maybe he is a nice Christian family man. I don't know. But he does have a track record of being full of himself and rubbing his teammates the wrong way. Pete Carroll and the Seattle Seahawks pushed him out of Seattle. He showed up in Denver and had his own office. That's weird. Like, do you have to be so ignorant to the rest of the guys in the locker room and so incredibly arrogant to think that you're above just like having a locker like a normal person? Okay, and he was just so it seems like he doesn't get it sometimes. And like Anthony Richardson not understanding it makes a little more sense because he's 22. Russell Wilson not getting it after he'd been in the league for over a decade is a major red flag. Okay, and things were so bad there in Denver that they paid him a boatload of money to go away. And after 1 year of the Steelers paying him $2 million, they're like, you know what? We're good. We don't want you around here anymore. If they did want him around, then they wouldn't have tried to trade for Trevor Lawrence. Okay, he also doesn't care about his teammates. He is all about himself. Clearly, Marshawn Lynch went on Shannon Sharp's podcast and discussed a little bit the ending of things in Seattle. Here's what Marshawn Lynch had to say about Russell Wilson.
We was playing against Tennessee, and they had, they secondary wasn't, they wasn't good. And we were supposed to throw the ball for 500 yards or some like that. And, he didn't have a game. Russ didn't have a game that he wanted. And so, man, after the game, I did pretty good. You feel me? 2 tugs, 150 rushing, another 50 receiving. So after the game, just all of the hype building up, you're supposed to do this and we gonna have it. It didn't work out that way. So, man, I reached out to our personnel dude and I like, hey, man, let me get Russ' number. Call him, holla at him. I'll call you back. So then, he called me back like, hey, did you, you get a call? I'm like, no. He's like, no, Russ just said he called you. I'm like, no, I got a call from a blocked number. He's like, oh, that's him. I'm like,
he blocked his number.
I don't know if he blocked it or if, I don't know how it went. I just know it got a call from a blocked number. So when I called back and I'm just like, hey, bro, I ain't calling you as no media.
No fan, no stalker, bro. This me. I'm a teammate.
Shit. Like, I'm calling you. I'm telling you straight up, like I'm calling you on some real. Like, I think this is the first time that I actually tried to have a conversation with Blood. So I'm like, yeah, you feel me? I know you didn't have the game that you wanted to have. I'm like, but look, check it out. That's what I'm here for. And you know what I mean? And if, the shoe on the other foot, I expect for it to be the same way.
Right.
Like if we gotta, you know what I mean? I'm here for you. You here for me. You feel me? You let me know. And we go like, and his response to me kind of like was like,
So what exactly was his response? What did he
we ain't gonna get into all that, man. You feel me?
It was bad, huh?
I mean, yeah, considering,
that you reached out.
That we on the same team going for the same goal, and this was how you chose to respond to me. It was more so like, maybe you don't understand what I'm saying.
Marshawn Lynch right there talking about his experience of playing with Russell Wilson. And that just doesn't seem like the kind of guy I would want to be teammates with. That doesn't seem like the kind of guy that I would want to bring into a locker room. Like Marshawn Lynch had Russell Wilson's number blocked. Marshawn Lynch barely talked to the guy. And like, it's not like one's on offense and one's on defense and you're in different meeting. No. Like they stood beside each other every game when they were in shotgun. And I just, to say that he barely talked to the guy and he hadn't really tried to talk to him until after that Titans game is insane to me. And the fact that Russell Wilson never made an attempt to talk to him either is baffling. And then Marshawn Lynch, being a good teammate, reaches out, tries to encourage him. Russell Wilson didn't appreciate it, clearly. And, I think one of the better things about team sports is like you can suck and someone else can play great and you can still win. It's really nice. Okay. Like having a day, I played baseball in college and all that kind of stuff. And like having a day where you go 0 for 4, but, the guy who's hitting before you is like 3 for 4 with a bomb and 5 RBI. And like that's like a really cool thing, And then, they're able to come up to you after the game. They're like, hey, bro, like, keep your head up. And you're like, hey, bro, thanks for being, thank you for playing so well. That's how that conversation should go. And the fact that Russell Wilson didn't appreciate his teammate trying to pick him up is that's a red flag for me. And that's not the only story like that we have. Like there's a story of Richard Sherman trying to book Russell Wilson on his podcast. This is after, Richard Sherman has retired. And Russell Wilson's like, if you want to book me, you can talk to my people. like that's just such a douchebag thing to say. And I don't want a guy like that in the Colts locker room because this Colts locker room already is terrible. There's already problems and issues. And bringing in a guy like Russell Wilson isn't going to help with that. The only positive is if Anthony Richardson beats him out, he won't be as big of an issue as a guy like Aaron Rodgers because Russell Wilson does care about his image and he knows throwing a little hissy fit isn't really going to, help that image. But it's not going to matter. Russell Wilson's going to be the guy that the Colts bring in because he fits the offense. He's got some pedigree, but it's not going to end well because it never ends well for Russell Wilson. Okay? It ended poorly in Seattle. It ended poorly in Denver, and it ended rather quickly in Pittsburgh. And I'm sure he did some stupid stuff, but because it's the Steelers, it's not going to get out because they don't let anything get out. And despite all of those red flags, Chris Ballard is going to bring in Russell Wilson because he just desperately needs a win. He just desperately needs to do something that creates at least a little bit of excitement. And bringing in a guy like Russell Wilson might do that. I don't really think that it will, but it might more so than it did bringing in Joe Flacco. So we'll kind of see how all that ends up panning out. But yeah, that's what my money's on. The Colts bring in Russell Wilson to be that competition for Anthony Richardson. We got Four Nations hockey tonight. I can't wait. I'm fired up. USA versus Canada. This is going to be fantastic. Okay, I'm going to be fully tuned in because it's Team USA in Canada. I don't know who's going to win, but I know it's going to be fun and entertaining. I know that Boston crowd is going to boo the crap out of the Canadian national anthem. I know there's going to be fights. I know that I'm going to get to see some of the best players in hockey play in the game. And that's ultimately what we want to see. Okay, I don't know if the game's going to be good. I know that, Team USA, last time I checked, is favored by 1.5 goals. And it's going to be entertaining as all get out. Like, that's what sports are. Okay, there's been a lot of discussion about the NBA and like the lack of entertainment in that game. It's like we're not going to be short on entertainment tonight between Team Canada and Team USA. I can't wait to watch this game. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. And then, of course, coming up on Sunday, Purdue and IU. That game is going to own televisions across the state of Indiana. The intensity should be off the charts. Indiana needs this game to make the tournament. Purdue's trying to avoid 4 straight losses. Joe Jackson, who was on the show earlier, pointed out that Purdue hadn't lost 3 games in a row in 6 years. It's a long time. Okay. And like, man, 4 losses in a row would be kind of brutal for Purdue because they're still fighting for seeding. They were on the 2 line. Last time I checked, Joe Lunardi now has them on the 3 line. So like they're competing for something still as well. And the thing that I'm most intrigued to see about this game on Sunday is what's going to happen with Malik Reneau. I think he's the biggest difference heading into this game. He fouled out in 8 minutes in that first game in West Lafayette. Even if he had played, 20 minutes, I don't know how impactful he would have been, given it was his 3rd game back from the injury. He hadn't quite gotten back into that rhythm yet. So even though he fouled out, I don't know how impactful he would have been if he hadn't. But I do think he will be impactful on Sunday because he's finally back in that rhythm. He scored 14 points or more in his last 3 games, and he's shooting 50% from the field in those last 3 games. He helped Indiana put Michigan State away. Okay, they gave him the ball on the block and said, go score. And he was like, okay, I'm going to get to my left hand, and I'm going to score, and there's nothing that you guys can do about it. Okay, so he's back. He's in that rhythm. He's playing just really good basketball right now. And when you go back to that game that Indiana lost on the road at West Lafayette, like they just didn't have quite enough offense down the stretch. Now, they obviously shot themselves in the foot. Miles Rice takes that bad shot. All those things happen. But in the final 5 minutes of that game, Purdue outscored Indiana 18-9. Indiana just didn't have enough offense to win that game. They also didn't, rebound the ball well enough in the second half because that's the big advantage for Indiana in this game. Okay, Purdue, as we all know, they really struggle with size, and Indiana had, I can't remember if it was 8 or 13. I think they had 8 offensive rebounds in the first half, and they finished the game with 13, so they only had 5 in the second. Maybe if Malik Reneau's in there, and because he gives them a little bit more size, maybe they grab more than 5 offensive rebounds and they score, 6 more second chance points in that game, and then that's enough for them to win. Okay, Malik Reneau is going to have a major impact on the game on Sunday, and I can't wait to see what it looks like. And then in addition to that, Pacers, they're hosting the Memphis Grizzlies tonight. Can't wait to watch. They are 2.5-point dogs. Don't care. Probably going to bet the Pacers because they're at home. First game back from the All-Star break. We're going to start to see teams really kind of ratchet it up a little bit as we get closer and closer to the playoffs. Miles Turner, his first game back. He's got a lot to deal with Zach Edey, who's going to be a ton of fun to watch tonight. And Jaren Jackson Jr., a really good player, an all-star this year for Memphis. So that game's going to be fun. Tyrese Halliburton, I'm begging you, please get to the rim. Please. Okay, like that is, if the Pacers want to be better offensively, that's something that has to happen. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to tune into the Real Jonathan Smith Show. I'll be back on the air tomorrow from 10 to noon. Going to be fantastic, right? Got a great show lined up. It's going to be awesome. The Dan Dockett Show comes your way next. Coming up at 1 o'clock, it is Coach Mike Lewis. And then at 2 o'clock, the great Seth Greenberg is going to join the show to talk a little more college basketball as we continue to get you ready for Indiana and Purdue, the rematch. I'm very intrigued to see what the line is on that game, just because Purdue's struggling. Indiana's been close. They could have won that game in West Lafayette. So very interested to see where the sports books put that line at. Once again, that game is on Sunday at 1:30. The Dan Dockett Show, it's going to be great today. Missouri coming at Dan's head. So, it's going to be fantastic. Thank you again for taking the time out of your day to listen to my show. I'll be back on the air tomorrow from 10 to noon, and I'll talk to you then. The Dan Dockett Show comes your way starting at noon.